Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. What's up, friends? I hope you're doing great out there today. Today is going to be a fun one. I have the executive director of the Dental Success Network on with me today, Sydney Robinson. How you doing today, Sid?
I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. What's been going on in your world lately? I guess you've been traveling quite a bit, huh? Leading up to the holiday.
Yes, it's been really eventful this last few months, leading up to the holiday,
Hmm.
end of year, traveling to practices, training team members, getting to know a lot of our members. And I'm super excited for what's to come for the next couple of weeks and for 2024, just because with me now being in the field, me now working with a lot of our people, we're understanding what practice owners need on a more intimate level when it comes to system and implementation.
Hmm.
And so I'm really excited for all the things that we're doing and the trends that we're seeing here when it comes to team training. So yeah, excited stuff.
Yeah, super exciting. So, for those of you guys that may not know this, we've talked about this before on past episodes with Sydney. Sydney was one of my office managers in a couple of my dental practices in the Phoenix area for some time. When we started DSN, we felt like it was a natural fit for Sydney to come over and start coaching and being part of the executive team for DSN, which is where she is now. And now you're getting kind of to go back into the field a little bit. It's called you back, and now you're going to be coaching or have been coaching office managers, teams, and doctors, practice owners within the confines of their own practice.
Mhm.
So tell us kind of what you've been seeing out there in the field as you've been traveling to visit these offices. A few of the offices that you have visited were large, really well run practices. So um,
Right.
I think it's worth noting that no matter where you are in the timeline, no matter how big you are, no matter how sophisticated you are, there's always um, value in sharpening the saw and meeting regularly with somebody that has an outsider's perspective, an objective kind of outsider's perspective. Because when you're in it, a lot of times it's hard to see what the main priorities are, and if the baby's broken, it's hard to tell when you're kind of in the trenches and so close to it. So, what are some of the common themes you've been seeing with the larger and smaller practices that you've been visiting this year?
Oh my, this is I'm so excited for this question because it's what we see inside of the network is what people constantly post about inside of DSN. And
Mhm.
it's really how to manage people. That is the top thing that I go
Humans,
in. Yeah,
humans.
how to manage human beings. And that is one of the biggest struggles that practice owners have because you guys have your CEO hat on. You're constantly thinking about growth. You're thinking about all the things, work life balance and all the things, and then you hire an office manager or you don't have an office manager and the practice owner is the one that's doing everything and everyone's coming to them. So one of the biggest things that I see is how to manage people and how to not be the bottleneck in the practice. And I want to expand on that a bit because one of the biggest things that I hear is, oh my goodness, my practice doesn't run when I'm not in the office. Or if I'm not here, or if I'm here, everyone's coming to me. If I'm at home with my family, everyone's coming to me and asking questions. So the biggest thing that I go in and help with is how do we eliminate the interruptions? How do we coach our leaders to be leaders in the practice and not managers in the practice? Because there is a huge difference. So that's thing number one is how to manage people and how to really be a leader in the practice and not be the bottleneck and the micromanager. The next thing that I see, it really goes back to software and implementation. So I really have a big emphasis on how can we work smarter and not harder. And a lot of that came from, this year people struggled with hiring and getting people into the practice, hiring treatment coordinators or dental assistants. Well, how can you utilize what you already have in your practice to still be able to be productive, efficient, and still grow your practice while still having the same patient care? So I do see when I go into the practice that some of their softwares and systems aren't being utilized as they should. And so we do dive into that a bit. And then the final things is, of course, system and implementation. So it kind of runs hand in hand when we talk about being short staffed, when we talk about utilizing softwares and things like that. I found that both of those things run hand in hand because people are leaving not because, oh, someone down the street offered me more money. It's usually because of systems and processes. It's usually because, hey, we have this software. There is a way that we can still, grow the practice, utilize the systems that we have in place. It's combined with managing people versus leading people. And then the final trickle down to that is the system and implementation. Hey, I have this system, but only Sydney knows the system. Only Mark Costas knows the system, but not everyone that's in the office knows the system. If I was to be abducted by aliens, do we know how the practice will run and fully function? And
Mhm.
empowering, encouraging your team members to actually follow through and follow up with those systems and processes. So those are the main things that I usually see inside of the practice. And I usually go in and help train them on those. How can you maximize open dental so that you're getting the most out of your insurance payments? Are you using quick notes? Did you know that there's such a thing as unearned income and money should be placed and allocated? So we really go into a lot of details and intimate details in the practice and start training team members.
I love it. You said this a couple times this term, and I'd love to kind of push on that just a little bit to get some clarification and to help people understand the distinction. Can you tell us, in your view, what the difference is between leading in a dental practice versus managing in a dental practice?
Yes, of course. I like to use empowerment, encouragement, and leadership, your leadership influence, and what does that look like? So there's a difference between being a leader and a manager. A manager is someone who will go in, and if I have a problem, I can go to Sydney and I can say, hey, Sydney, I have a problem. And Sydney's going to fix it. Because instead of empowering me, instead of giving me the tools and resources to go in and execute said task, I'm just going to do it because I feel like I can get it done a lot faster than it is me empowering and coaching and training my team members on how to accomplish that goal or task that they're trying to do.
Hmm.
And so the difference between a leader is someone who is wanting to see their team grow, who doesn't want to hold the keys to the castle, who wants to be able to delegate payroll to an office manager. Although, hey, you know what? I don't know if I truly trust my office manager to do the payroll. Well, maybe that's something we need to dissect because, hey, that is someone who you have deemed as your right hand person who's going to help you lead the practice, and vice versa for office managers. If you came from a position as a billing coordinator, and yet you hired a billing coordinator, but you find yourself still always doing AR or still submitting claims, that means that we haven't empowered, encouraged, or trained that person to fill those shoes. And we are now just managing that position, hoping that that person still is swimming, hoping that that person is going to be successful in that position, and always using you as a crutch versus, hey, I'm going to empower this person to be the best in that position. I'm going to coach this person on how to maximize insurance benefits. I want to influence this person to collaborate with their team members. So instead of coming to me about a dental assistant who maybe forgot to put notes in, I'm going to empower, encourage them. Hey, go collaborate with team members. Go talk to Sydney, tell her what your challenges are, and then together come up with solutions of how you guys can fix that broken system. And now all of us can continue to be one collaborative, one cohesive office and office practice.
I love that. What is when you're in the field versus coaching people virtually, what does that look like? So you're walking into an office. A lot of times it's the first time you're meeting a lot of those people. This is a kind of a two-part question, but you can answer it in the same thread here. A lot of times when I used to go into practices, because when I was early in the dental coaching world, and when I was first starting DSI, I would actually literally go to each of my clients' practices a couple times a year. And then, they would assemble the team around and we would work through challenges and put systems together. And for the most part, it was really positive. But a lot of times we would get some of the more seasoned um, manager types in the practice with their arms folded and suspicious because they have had maybe three coaches before in the past and that didn't go well. And I've been doing this long enough. Nobody's going to tell me how to do my job, or is my job at risk now? Are they here to potentially tell the doctor to fire me or keep me? So I kind of encountered a lot of suspicion and closed mindedness from a lot of people. But maybe within this answer, you can say, like, what is a typical day when you travel out into practices look like? And then how do you overcome that kind of guarded nature that people have when consultants walk in the door?
Yeah, well, I have to honestly just give credit where credit is due. Mark, you have done this for so many years, and I've sat back and helped you with a lot of these things, watch you walk into practices or even meet with doctors. And the biggest thing that I always like to do first is I want to get to know the practice intimately. I
Mhm.
want to know all of their challenges, all of their wins. So we've always start off with an assessment, and a lot of it is your assessment that you use for your private clients, but we want to tweak it a bit and make it more for team members. So we want to identify some of those challenges.
Mhm.
And I find that when we first do that assessment, people don't know what they don't know, even the office managers. Right. And so I always like to start off with that first initial phone call before I even step foot into the practice. And what I found is if I get the office manager on board in that call when we do go through that assessment. And then the other thing is I always encourage practice owners. So I always start with the practice owners, then I talk to the office manager and then the team. I always let the practice owner know I want to collaborate with your team. I don't want to come in, I don't want to tell them what to do. I want to, it's a conversation that we're having. It's us working together and encouraging and empowering and leading the team, and not me coming in and telling them what to do. So we established that before I even get into the practice. And I've built a relationship already with the team, with office manager, and set expectations with the practice owner. So when I do come into the practice, it's like, oh my God, we finally get to see you. We can't believe that you're here. And everyone's really excited and pumped because we've already had the pre-meetings beforehand. And
Mhm.
so now I've met these people, I've talked to them, and I know them more intimately. And so when I go into the practice, I call them by name. Oh my goodness, Catherine, it was so great to chat with you last week. How did it go with that patient? And so
Mhm.
I can now start to make connections with team members. So to answer that question, it's making connections and it's understanding each and every team member's own pain points, their own personal why they're here. And then when we're in the practice, I let them know, hey, I want to support you. Let's talk first about, we look through this assessment. I see here's where you're struggling. Can you tell me more about it? Tell me more about what I can do to help support you. And then the conversation and all, it's like a word vomit of everything from all the team members.
Yeah.
And it's actually really exciting. So I've had the pleasure of not running into the arms folded, the hey, I'm going to be standoffish. I've been doing this for years because the conversation that we have is I'm here to collaborate with you and I'm not here to tell you what to do. And then the other thing that I talk a lot about is I am a huge fan of this book called How to Have a Good Day. And so learning a lot of those signs of behavioral science and body language of when I see this person fold their arms, I can tell their defense is up. So now how do I get them in more of an inquisitive mindset? How do I get them to want to collaborate with me? So I start to recognize those signs where I can tell if I'm pushing too hard, this person is now going to shut down and not be on the, not want to work with me. So I hope that answers your question of
Sounds good.
how do we overcome that.
I like that. I like that. And I like your style, and we've kind of gone through these assessments together. We've kind of authored some of them together. Assessments and baselines prior to a visit, I think, do a lot of things, right? First of all, use the term people don't even know what they don't know, right? When you're asking different questions about the practice, and they're unable to answer them, or they recognize that, oh, we don't even do that in our practice at all. This isn't even a system that even exists in our practice. We've never considered this. I've been doing this for 20 years. It doesn't lead to defensiveness. It actually leads to curiosity and open-mindedness, I think, a lot of times. So that's one of the things that I think baseline exercises and assessments do very, very effectively without being, without it feeling like you're pointing your finger and saying, here are the areas where you're falling short, right? It's just opening their mind, like, here are all the different things that we could do to improve the practice. How are you performing in these areas? It's like, well, I'm going to give myself a 0 on this because we don't even have this system, or I haven't even considered assessing the practice in this manner. So I think those are really, really effective ways of disarming people, getting people curious, and lowering their defenses, but also giving us a very, very clear um, idea of what the priorities are in the practice, right? So if you're assessing a practice from the front office, systems and flow, from a patient experience, from a clinical efficiency, from an overhead and cash flow, from an expenditure, variable expense percentage kind of direction and angle, all of those things are really important. And in most cases, the team members, even the executive leadership, don't know the answers to all of those questions. So I think awareness is really important, but I also, does a great job for opening minds, and people that are closed off and defensive. It also helps to get them to engage in the process. I don't know. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do. And you said a ton of good things here. You said a ton of good things here, which, I can only imagine if we didn't start off with those assessments and I just went in guns blazing, telling people what they're doing wrong. I'm open up a can of worms of roadblocks and barriers that I have to overcome. And so, yes, it is really good to be able to start these assessments. And I've seen it work with DSI members, with practice owners, and that is what really set us apart from other consulting companies.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So what is your style? Would you say that your style is more of a partnership style with the leadership team? Is it more instruction? How is it that you get them to engage and get them to follow through when everything in the practice is so chaotic and so busy? A lot of the practices that you go to are super at capacity and super successful, but that also leads to um, the challenge of not having the bandwidth and the time to actually implement some of the things that you're suggesting.
Yeah, again, another page out of your book that I learned and from some really great Black belt coaches is really focusing on one thing at a time. So when we go into the practice, I like to collaborate with the practice owner. So there is a weekly cadence that I do have with the practice owner or executive team. For those bigger practices that have multiple partners, in
Hmm.
the beginning, I love accountability, and you taught me this. Accountability is key. I let them know that we work together hand in hand, and I'm holding them accountable for making sure that they're making these weekly or monthly meetings with the executive or practice owners. It's important for them to know what I'm teaching or coaching their team members. It's important to know the progress that we're making when it comes to system implementation or whatever it is that they're hiring me for.
Hmm.
It's also really good to know that sometimes it's not your team. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem, you know. And sometimes I do have to have those coaching moments. So when you said that earlier about, I do work with the practice owners, sometimes I do have to coach up the practice owners too when it comes to that leadership part of it. You just can't stick a piece of paper on Susie's desk and think that Susie's just gonna do it.
It's funny too, because one of the big ethics of DSI is 100% extreme ownership. Jocko Willink, extreme ownership. That's one of our sexy six books that everybody must read to work with us. In order to work with us, we have a number of different books that we want them to read first, so they understand our philosophies and we're coming from the same mindset. But the problem with 100% and extreme ownership sometimes is they take responsibility for everything, even if
Yes.
it's not necessarily their fault, which I love. look
Yeah,
inward first and see how you could have done better, but also you have to hold your people accountable. So that's a big part of coaching, right? It's like, okay, here are the things that you can control. Here are the things that are in your control. Here are the things that you must delegate out. And how can you control that process as well? Um,
exactly.
being crystal clear with your expectations, giving them all of the resources that they need to be successful in their position. But the big, big thing to push an initiative forward is accountability. Huge.
Right. It is huge. And I found that I made my mistakes, in the beginning. And I found that when I do set that tone in the beginning in that initial call, and then I've text people sometimes like, hey, I haven't heard from you in over a week. Tell me more about those action items that we put in place. I want to get to know you or get to chat with you. Hey, life got in the way. Let's set up a call. And I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to shoot that text message over so that, I'm helping, holding the practice owners accountable. And then one of the biggest things I want to say here is with those multi-practice owners, what I find successful when there's 3 or 4 practices that we're trying to work with is going back to our org chart, right? I revamped a lot of things when I'm working with bigger practices.
Yeah.
And now we have, if those org charts, well, we have those weekly cadence with the regional manager, office manager, practice owners. I try to get all of them on one call. We actually carve out the time in the beginning. So starting out with me, we will pick a day that works best for everybody. And we put that as a reoccurring appointment. That way we're not trying to scramble and just go in and schedule this. It's already on the books. It's already on the schedule. And then we have that weekly or monthly leadership call, depending on what you choose, where we calibrate. And then I always do a once a month big team meeting where we're making sure everybody's all on one space. I really do like to have that in person, but a lot of times those are virtual. And we just make sure that, again, we're treating it like we would the weekly or monthly meetings where we're going through what's going great, KPIs, challenges, and then we're setting lead and measures following for the next meeting that we have. So it is important that we continuously communicate, continuously collaborate with the leaders in the practice, along with those team members if we're doing especially individual coaching.
Amazing. Okay, so let's talk more about Front Office Academy because Front Office Academy is the main kind of hub upon which you are utilizing and spinning off the different processes and systems that you teach. All of those reside inside Front Office Academy. It's a virtual community that is open to anybody, including, practice owners and all of their auxiliaries. When you join Front Office Academy, you get like 22 or 24 logins. So usually have enough logins for even people on a larger team. And I think that the FOA people will even extend that out to more logins so people have access to the content. But there's a lot of content in there, and I guess you would call that kind of done with you, right? So it's like you log in, and there is a bunch of content, easy to index, easy to find on all things admin related for a dental practice, all things front office. And then there's office hours where you can actually talk to a coach. You can set up an appointment to talk to a coach. So there's support for front office people there. Now, within that organization, you're extending that to what you've been doing, and you're going to go out into the field for people that desire or need a coach to go out into the field. So you or one of your coaches is going to go out into the field and work with these office managers, with these executive teams, with these doctors, um, to integrate systemization and culture and leadership and all the stuff that we teach inside FOA, but you're going to do that with them in the field. So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like. When does it get started? Because you've been doing these here and there for people that are requesting it, but this is going to be an official portion of FOA now.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're expanding our services within Front Office Academy. So you'll have your Front Office Academy, which is our base level, and you'll be able to access over 500 recordable videos, over, I don't know, now 600, 700 downloadable documents. And you'll be able to jump on, like Mark said, those coaching calls that we have every Friday at noon. and we discuss all various topics such as insurance billing, coding, open dental, things like that. But then you can go in and you can upgrade, or you can extend services by doing more one-on-one customized training. So we're taking those resources, and now we can customize that based off of those assessments, based off of, you know, all the things we just discussed here. And now we're going to put together a training plan. How can we go in and train your team members? And you're going to be able to watch these series of curated videos that we're going to recommend for training. Like I mentioned, we always have this assessment. Everyone knows who I am prior to coming into the practice. This is part of that.
Mhm.
Then you have a further extension where we really get intimate and we add in a leadership coaching side of that. We add in the in-office visits where I come in and I can strategically see where the bottleneck, where the holes are, and we can start to plug in those holes. So I do work more on an intimate level in that sense, where we want to go in and we can start talking to individuals. We can talk to not only front office, but dental assistants. Like, okay, I am struggling with always running behind. Let's talk about it. Let me see your workflow. What do you think about this? So we can really get in and we can intimately go in and strategically curate the training that can customize it to each individual practice. And one of my favorite things is the leadership office manager training.
Mm.
I see time and time again, office managers are promoted up from a dental assistant, treatment coordinator, whatnot, and they know their craft, they know their skill, but have no idea how to manage a team. And that's where I really love is to be able to see our office managers flourish in this area, relieving some of the stress from the practice owners who feel like the whole weight of the practice is on their shoulders, and training them and giving them a clear understanding of what it means to lead and manage a practice, giving them those skills of how to read a P&L to that certain extent of now looking and saying, okay, we're overspending in this quadrant. I'm going to go and find where we can really receive more discounts when it comes to vendor savings, when it comes to, you know, cash flow or overhead. So starting to get them to think how the owners would think, and what you're teaching, and a lot of our awesome Black Belt coaches are teaching. We want to start teaching our office managers that as well.
Yeah, that's great. You make a really good point. We say this all the time. And Sydney, I've made this mistake so many times in assuming that just because somebody is exceptional at their position, that they're also going to be exceptional at leading and managing an entire office. And for that matter, if they're good at their position, that they're going to be good at training somebody else to do that same very position, right? So I
Yeah.
think I think it's important that we don't assume that just because somebody is an expert in an area that they're going to be an expert in teaching it.
Right.
We have to have some sort of a structure and process in order to teach them how to lead, in order
Mhm.
to teach them how to convey that information to somebody else, and to hold somebody else accountable, and to create uh, people that aren't just robots, but they are able to kind of adapt to real life scenarios, right?
Right.
Um, that is kind of the high level stuff that a good coach can train a good team to do. Um, and that's kind of what you do. And I think that's a really big benefit to being there in person. There's a different level of accountability, there's a different level of buy in when somebody has a real life person right in front of them and they're talking through some of the challenges and really putting a solid plan together face to face, knee to knee, and really just kind of going for it. What have you found to be some of the well, let's start with challenges first. What have you found to be some of the biggest challenges to integrating new processes into a practice? We'll start with that one first.
It will definitely be the team buy-in and the follow-up. So when I go into a practice and everyone's super excited, they're gun-ho, they want to get things done. Everyone have really great ideas. We put it all together. I leave the practice and a week later where they don't expect for me to follow up with them. I will follow up and say, hey, how is this going? And then, oh, we haven't had time.
Mm.
And so it's going back to that accountability part of it, right? It's going back to making sure that we've had these great ideas. We want to implement these systems. Where are we falling short? And usually it's because they'll get back into their day to day. they'll get back into, oh my God, phone's ringing, such and such just called out sick, live chaos happens. And so then I start talking more about order versus chaos, setting expectations. If we know that this is what we truly want it to accomplish in X amount of time, then we have to make sure that we're setting that as a priority. So if it's going to take us a little time to implement a new system, then we have to make sure that we're pivoting and we're carving out the time. We're making sure that we're holding each other accountable,
Mhm.
and we have to make sure that it's measurable. Because if you're not measuring it, and if you're not having those morning huddles and saying inside of morning huddle, hey, I know that we want to increase case acceptance or handoffs, for example. I
Mhm.
noticed that I had 3 people that didn't get a handoff. Tell me more about it. And so I find that I have to train office managers or leaders in the practice of how to hold their team accountable in that sense without them seeming micromanaging.
Mhm.
And so it's all about, again, going back to finding that time to do it, because I would find that the office manager or leader will, life just got back in the way. And now I don't have time to go and track how many handoffs we have. I don't
Mhm.
have time to go back and do that. I also don't want to say the wrong thing, especially those office managers who are struggling with culture. And they're like, well, it's hard enough for me to get my team to do something. And yet I go in and say, hey, you didn't do it. Well, of course, if you say it that way, no, they're on defense. So now I got to start training them of how to get their team back into that inquisitive mode of how I left them, and then back into wanting to get start to do those things. So that is one of the biggest challenges that I actually do see. And how I overcome that is going back to accountability, going back to, hey, Susie, did you reconnect with the team members? Did you tell them the challenges? No, because of X, Y, and Z. We have to make sure it's repetitive. It's just like potty training. It's just like,
Huh.
going to exercise and waking up every day and doing those things. It has to be repetitive. And so that accountability part is super huge within our organization.
That's so cool. Yeah, you said a lot of really interesting and accurate things in my opinion. How do people that are interested in having you or one of your coaches come out to their office, how do they engage? What's the first step?
Well, the first step is to go to the website, foacoaching.com /DSN, because if you're listening to the podcast, DSN members get steep discount. So if you're not a DSN member, sign up with DSN. But that is the first place that a lot of people go. If you want to know more on that page, you can schedule a discovery call with me and we can talk through a lot of your challenges, wins, things that you're looking to change and implement.
Okay.
Um, what I like to say first is don't get to that point where you're burnt out. Don't get to that point where I'm going to lose my office manager or I'm going to lose team members. And now you want to go in. If you're already wanting to implement change, you're struggling with systems and implementation, you're a DSN member, and you have all these questions about how do I train my team or how do I not have my team come to me? It is time for you to make sure you go and either schedule a discovery call or make sure that you're signed up with FOA so that we can start to get your team members to speak the same language. So to contact me, go to front office, or excuse me, FOA Coaching /DSN and find out more information, schedule a call, or sign up with us, and we can get started.
So that's F as in Frank, O as in Oscar, A as in Apple, coaching,
Coaching.
FOA coaching
Yep.
dot com /DSN.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Cindy, I'm so glad that you've decided to go this direction and dust off the old travel boots and get back out there into the field. This is really good. I mean, uh, this is something that I believe every single practice could benefit from, some more than others. I love that you said a lot of people don't know what they don't know, no matter where you are in the level of sophistication of your office or your own personal assessment of your office. It's always worth it to see if you have undiscovered opportunities, right? For some people, it's like, this is obvious. I have 85% overhead. My turnover is ridiculous. It feels like chaos every single day. That's a no-brainer. You definitely need a little bit of help with coaching, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I had coaching throughout my entire practice ownership career. I think it's really, really important. Or you could be somebody that's, already got 50% overhead, but you know that there are opportunities that you're not taking advantage of. You just don't even know what they are yet. So no matter where you are in the trajectory, I think it's valuable to get in office coaching if you have the ability to do so. So
Yeah.
Sydney, once again, thank you for being awesome. Thank you for taking on this role. Thank you for doing such a great job of being kind of the mouthpiece for DSN and for all things dental success companies. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the executive director of the Dental Success Network, Sydney Robinson.